They spit on me. Then a human saluted me. Sarn walked slowly through the long metal hallway, holding a dirty mop in his three-fingered hand. The floor was sticky again. Someone had spilled glowing drink fluid from the bar above. No one cared. It was always his job to clean up after the others. He was small. His back was bent. His skin was dark gray, and his eyes were soft and tired. He wore an old brown jumpsuit with a broken name tag that just said X. No one ever called him by name. The station was huge. Galactic Outpost 92, floating between human and alien space. Over 1 million beings lived here. Warriors, scientists, traders, and Sarn, the janitor. As he worked, 2 tall reptilian guards walked past. One looked down at him and laughed. "Still alive, trash?" the guard said. Sarn didn't answer. The second guard kicked over the bucket of water. "Oops," he smirked. "Clean it again, cleaner." They walked away, laughing. Sarn knelt quietly and began wiping the mess. His knees hurt. His hands trembled. He had once dreamed of being a pilot. That dream was gone now. Most days were the same. Spit, kicks, laughter behind his back. He was nothing to them. Just a thing. A shadow in the corner. One day, something strange happened. Sarn was cleaning near Docking Bay 7, where new soldiers arrived every week. War was brewing again, and the humans had sent more troops. As always, Sarn kept his eyes low and his mouth shut. A group of soldiers marched in. Heavy boots, shining armor, flags of Earth on their shoulders. Sarn moved aside, pressing himself against the wall. He didn't want trouble. Then one of the humans stopped. He was tall, with sharp blue eyes and short brown hair. He wore a long coat, darker than space. His badge read, Captain Raynor. He looked at Sarn for a long second. Sarn held his breath. He expected a cruel joke. Maybe a boot in the face. Instead, Captain Raynor did something no one had ever done. He raised his hand and saluted. The hallway went silent. Everyone stared. Sarn blinked, confused. Was this some kind of trick? The human nodded and said calmly, "Thank you for your service." Sarn's mouth opened, but no words came. His throat was dry. Behind Raynor, another human whispered, "Captain, that's just a janitor." Raynor didn't turn. "No, that's a soul." The reptilian guards from earlier were watching. One of them snorted. "You honor that thing." Raynor turned to him. "He cleans your filth. He fixes your mess. And I bet he's never once failed to do his duty. Can you say the same?" The guard stepped back, unsure how to answer. Raynor looked back at Sarn. "What's your name?" Sarn hesitated. No one had asked him that in years. "X. Sarn." The human smiled. "Well, Sarn, it's good to meet you." Then he walked away with his team. Sarn stood frozen. His hands shook. He looked around. Everyone else kept walking, whispering, confused and curious. He felt something warm in his chest, a small light. He didn't know what it was at first. Then he realized. It was pride. That night, Sarn sat alone in the storage room where he slept. He looked at his reflection in a broken piece of mirror. "Thank you for your service," he whispered to himself. No one had ever said that before. He didn't sleep much that night. The next day, when he walked through the station, something was different. Some people still ignored him. Others stared. A few even stepped out of his way. Captain Raynor passed him again. This time, he gave a small nod. And Sarn nodded back. It wasn't much, just a moment. But for Sarn, it changed everything. Because for the first time in his life, someone had seen him. Not as a cleaner, not as a nobody, but as a person. And he would never forget that. Not ever. Humans don't ignore pain. They fight it. The light in the station dimmed as emergency repairs flickered through the power grid. Sarn stood beside a broken food dispenser, watching sparks drop like falling stars. He had just finished mopping up a spilled tray when he heard the sound again. The boots. Human boots. He looked up, and there he was, Captain Rayner, walking down the corridor, calm and confident, like the galaxy didn't scare him at all. "Morning, Xarn," Rayner said with a small nod. No one had ever said morning to Xarn before. He nodded back, unsure what to say. Rayner paused beside him. "You always work this early?" Xarn nodded. I start before the halls get crowded. Less mess." Rayner looked around at the flickering walls. "This place is falling apart, and yet it keeps running. Because of people like you." That sentence stayed with Xarn. Over the next few days, Captain Rayner kept coming back. He asked questions. He listened. He even helped carry heavy equipment once when Xarn's lift cart broke. Other aliens watched from a distance, confused. Why was a human officer talking to a cleaner? Some laughed. Some whispered. Some felt uncomfortable, because for them, kindness was weakness. But humans were different. One day, Rayner found Xarn fixing a busted air vent in a dark hallway. "You ever think about leaving this station?" Rayner asked. Xarn chuckled, but there was no joy in it. "I'm not welcome anywhere else." Rayner crossed his arms. "You know 7 languages, and you understand alien tech better than most engineers I've seen. Why are you still mopping floors?" Xarn looked down. "Because that's what they let me do." Rayner didn't look away. "Maybe they don't know your worth, but I do." For the first time in a long time, Xarn felt seen. That same week, something strange started happening. Ships began arriving late. Cargo went missing. Military codes were being scrambled without reason. The station's mainframe would shut down randomly for seconds, then restart. Everyone thought it was a glitch. But Xarn, he felt something was wrong. Deep in his bones, in the old instincts of his kind. One night, as he was cleaning near the command tower, he noticed a strange symbol flicker across a monitor. An ancient war mark from the outer systems. A mark used by a species long believed dead. Xarn's heart raced. He reported it. No one listened. The security officer, a bloated insectoid, waved him off. "Go clean something, cleaner." But Rayner did listen. When Xarn told him what he saw, the human's face changed. He didn't laugh. He didn't dismiss him. "Can you draw that symbol again?" Rayner asked. Xarn drew it in the dust on the table. Rayner's expression turned cold. "This is real. You're not imagining it." "What does it mean?" Xarn asked. Rayner looked him in the eye. "It means we're not alone anymore. And we might not be safe." The next morning, alarms echoed through the station. Red lights, sirens, screams. Something had entered the outer rings of the station. Something big and fast. Xarn ran toward the docking bay, where panic had begun. He saw fires, smoke, ships torn apart. The guards who once kicked him were now shouting in fear. Explosions rocked the halls. Rayner was already in armor, shouting orders, guiding civilians to shelter. His voice was steady, sharp like steel. Xarn wanted to run like everyone else, but something in him stopped. He saw a child crying beside her injured mother. No one noticed them. No one except Xarn. He rushed over, lifting the mother onto a hover cart and pulling the child into his arms. He guided them toward the shelter pods. The human guards at the gate almost blocked him. Then Rayner shouted, "Let him through you." Xarn moved quickly, helping more and more. People who had never looked at him twice now clung to his hands, begging for help. And he gave it. Every second, every ounce of strength. He became the hand in the fire, the shadow that carried the fallen, the silent savior no one saw coming. In the command room, the officers watched camera feeds. One of them pointed at the screen. "Who is that alien?" he asked. Rayner watched closely. "That's Xarn," he said quietly. "He's the reason anyone is still alive right now." The attack finally ended after 2 hours. The invaders vanished as fast as they came. But the damage was done. Over 100 dead, 200 more injured, and systems offline. Zarn sat in the corner of the medical bay, covered in soot and blood, not his own. His hands shook. Raynor sat beside him. "You didn't run," he said. "I was scared," Zarn whispered. "We're all scared," Raynor said. "But you fought anyway. That's what makes you strong." Zarn looked up, confused. "I didn't fight. I just helped." Raynor smiled. "In the middle of a storm, you chose to help. That's the kind of warrior I follow into fire." Zarn had never been called a warrior before. But the danger wasn't over. That night, deep in the damaged systems of the station, a silent signal was sent out. Not by accident. Someone, or something, was watching. And they weren't done yet. When the station fell, the weakest stood tall. The station was quiet. Too quiet. After the first attack, most believed the enemy would not return so soon. Repairs had only just begun. Power was weak. Systems were still rebooting. The station's leadership met behind locked doors, whispering about strategy. But outside those doors, fear walked the halls. Zarn stood in front of a cracked window, looking into deep space. Black. Endless. But something was coming. He could feel it. His people, long ago, had instincts, a sense for danger passed through generations. Most of his kind had forgotten that feeling. But not Zarn. He watched the stars shift slightly, like shadows dancing where there should be none. "They're coming back," he whispered to himself. In the command center, no one believed it. A young human officer rolled his eyes. The last attack was a raid. Just pirates. No way they return that fast. But Raynor leaned forward. "No, they weren't pirates. And if Karn says something's coming, I believe him." The room fell silent. One of the generals scoffed. "You trust a janitor over trained scouts." Raynor stood tall. "He's not just a janitor. He saved lives while your men froze in fear." The general looked away. A warning alarm suddenly flashed red. Ships, too many, dropping out of warp. No identification. No warning. They had returned. Panic followed like a storm. The outer hull shook violently. Explosions tore through docking bay 3. Fires lit the sky behind the windows. Emergency shutters slammed down. People screamed. Some tried to run. Some froze. Some shouted for help. And others, the elite commanders who were supposed to protect them, fled. Zarn watched as leaders left their posts. He saw one of the alien counselors push a child aside to get into an escape pod. No one was coming to save them. And that's when Zarn made a choice. He would save them himself. He sprinted through the broken halls, dodging sparks and falling pipes. His lungs burned. He had no weapon, no armor. But he had knowledge and heart. In Sector 9, fires had cut off power to the medbay. Dozens of wounded were trapped. Zarn crawled through the maintenance tunnels, dragging an emergency power line. Smoke filled his eyes. He couldn't breathe. But he didn't stop. He reached the power node, rewired it with shaking hands, and rerouted energy to the medbay. The lights flickered, then came back on. Machines restarted. Life support returned. The doctors inside gasped. Who did that? One nurse looked through a cracked window. It was the cleaner. Meanwhile, Captain Raynor was cornered in the eastern wing, pinned down with 5 soldiers. Their comms were dead. Enemy drones hunted the halls. Fall back, one soldier shouted. No, Raynor barked. There are civilians behind us. They were out of time. Then suddenly, the lights flickered again. Metal doors shifted open. A voice came through a nearby speaker. Zarn's voice. Follow the blue lights. I'll guide you. What? Karn? Raynor blinked. I used the old tunnels. I know every inch of this place. Trust me." The lights turned blue, leading them left. They followed. Through fire, past drones, around blocked passages. Every step they took, Sarn opened the doors remotely. He controlled the station like it was part of his body. He wasn't a janitor anymore. He was the mind of the machine. The surviving command center officers finally realized what was happening. "Who is controlling the emergency systems?" one asked. Another pulled up the access logs. His hand shook. Name registered as X. Everyone stared. "Sarn," Raynor said through comms. "It's him. He's saving us all." Back in the tunnels, Sarn reached the core power grid. It was failing. If it shut down, oxygen would stop flowing to over 1,000 rooms. But the grid was guarded by enemy drones now. Sarn ducked behind a panel. He was sweating, trembling. He had no weapon, only a tool belt. He breathed in. "You're just a cleaner," he whispered to himself. Then he heard Raynor's voice in his memory. "That's a soul." Sarn stood up. He grabbed a metal pipe, ran into the open, and struck the first drone with all his strength. Sparks flew. The machine dropped. The others turned. Sarn jumped into the pit and ripped out the damaged cable, connecting the emergency bypass. A bolt of energy surged through his body. Pain. Then power. The lights roared back to life across the station. Systems returned. Oxygen flowed. Shields reactivated. And across the galaxy, a signal was sent out. Station 92 holding. Resistance strong. Civilian survivors stable. Enemy retreating. Because of one name. Sarn. Later, when the battle ended and the enemy ships were gone, people began to gather in the central plaza. They were burned, bruised, scared, but alive. Raynor stood in front of them. And next to him, Sarn. No mop, no dirty uniform. He stood tall, wearing a simple jacket given to him by the human engineers. His hands still burned, his eyes still tired. But the people looked at him like he was made of light. Raynor spoke. Today, this station was attacked. Everyone was silent. Today, many brave soldiers stood tall, but none stood taller than Sarn. He looked at the crowd. He is not just a janitor, not just a cleaner. Today, he became our hero. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a child walked forward and hugged Sarn's leg. Then others joined. An engineer raised a broken helmet in the air. To Sarn, the crowd echoed. To Xarn, and deep in the stars, far from the station, the enemy watched. They had tried to break the humans, to test their allies. But instead, they had awakened something dangerous. Because now, the weakest one had become a symbol the galaxy would never forget. They called him a monster. Then he saved their children. The fires had stopped, but the smoke remained. Every corner of Station 92 smelled like melted metal, ash, and fear. Power systems flickered. The air was cold, and silence, deep, heavy silence, filled the hallways where screams had echoed just days before. But something else had also started to grow. Whispers. Whispers about Sarn. The janitor. The cleaner. The monster. Some called him a hero. Others weren't so sure. In the upper levels, the wealthy aliens, the ones who lived in glass towers above the working class, gathered in fear. "He's dangerous," one said. "He was in the systems. He could have destroyed everything," said another. "He's not one of us," a third hissed. "He's a mutant, a leftover from a dying race." Raynor was at that meeting too. He stood up slowly and looked them all in the eye. "You're scared because he did what none of you could." They didn't respond. "He saved your children," Raynor said. "And he didn't ask for a medal or a title. He just helped." They didn't like that, because power hates being humbled. Down below, in the broken living quarters of Sector 4, Sarn was sweeping again. The mop felt strange in his hands now. lighter. Not because it weighed less, but because he carried himself differently. People no longer ignored him. They nodded, smiled. Some even said thank you. But not everyone smiled. As he passed one hallway, a tall insectoid father pulled his two children close, whispering, "Stay away from that thing." Xarn heard it. He always did. He had heard it all his life. But now, it hurt a little less. That night, a message arrived from Earth. The president of the Human Council sent a public statement. The bravery of Captain Raynor and Xarn will be honored. Humanity stands with them. We will protect those who protect life, no matter where they are from. That message echoed across the station, but the enemy heard it too. And they wanted revenge. At 300 hours, a soft beeping started in the lower levels. Security systems blinked. Drones shut down. It wasn't a full invasion. It was a surgical strike, a silent infiltration. Their goal wasn't destruction this time. It was terror. And so, they moved quietly, through dark vents, silent as shadows, with one goal: the children's nursery. Xarn was resting when he heard it. The emergency tone was silent to most, a frequency only used during stealth attacks, one not even the guards had been trained to notice. But Xarn had lived in the walls of the station for years. He knew every sound, every hum, every vibration. And this sound was wrong. He jumped to his feet and ran. The nursery was hidden near the station's center, a safe zone built to protect young ones during war. But safety meant nothing now. The enemy had slipped inside. 3 creatures, taller than men, with armor like black bone and glowing red eyes, moved down the hallway. Silent, deadly, weapons in hand. Inside the nursery, 20 children slept. A nurse spotted the shadows on the security feed. Her hands shook. She tried calling for help, but the comms were jammed. She stood in front of the door, trying to lock it. Too late. The shadows reached the door. She braced herself. Then, Salam. A body hit the floor. But it wasn't hers. It was one of the invaders. Standing above it, breathing hard, blood on his hands, was Xarn. He had no armor, no shield, only a wrench. But his eyes were fierce. The other 2 enemies turned. One swung a blade. Xarn ducked. The second raised a plasma rifle. Too slow. Xarn grabbed the first one, using it as a shield. The shot hit the enemy's own partner, burning through armor. He threw the body aside and tackled the last one, slamming it into the wall. They fought hard. Claws against skin, metal against flesh. Finally, the enemy fell, unmoving. Xarn staggered, bleeding from his side. But he was still standing. Behind him, the door to the nursery opened. Tiny eyes stared out. Is it safe?" a little voice asked. Xarn knelt slowly. "Yes, it's safe now." One small human girl walked forward. She touched his arm, looking at the strange skin, the burns, the blood. "You're hurt." "I'm okay," he whispered. Are you a monster?" Xarn blinked. "No," he said gently. "I'm just someone who cares." She hugged him. Then the others came too. Dozens of small arms around him. Tiny voices whispering, "Thank you." By the time the guards arrived, the fight was over. And the children were safe. Raynor pushed through the crowd, saw the damage, saw Xarn still on his knees, surrounded by little ones, and his eyes filled with tears. "You saved them," Raynor said. Xarn nodded slowly, too tired to speak. News spread fast, faster than lies. Even the rich couldn't deny what they saw. Video footage showed it clearly. Xarn taking on 3 assassins alone, protecting the weakest, fighting without fear, not because he was ordered to, but because it was right. Days later, a mural was painted in the main plaza. It showed Xarn standing in front of the nursery doors, arms outstretched, a child behind each leg. Above the image, a single line of text. He was called a monster, but he became our shield. In every species language, the meaning was clear. Honor isn't in how you look. It's in how you choose to protect those who can't protect themselves. They wanted him dead. We made him a hero. The station was finally calm. No more alarms. No more attacks. But calm doesn't always mean safe. Sarn stood by the central plaza, watching workers repair a broken wall. His body ached from the last fight. The cuts on his arms still stung. His ribs were still bruised. But people saw him differently now. When he walked past, they nodded. Some smiled. Others, especially the children, waved excitedly. A few workers even called out, "Good morning, Sarn," like he was an old friend. It felt strange. For years, he was invisible, just a shadow. Now, he was the man everyone turned to. But not everyone was happy about that. Deep in the upper levels, behind locked doors, a group of station officials met in secret. They spoke quietly, their faces serious. "He's dangerous," one said. "A janitor shouldn't have this much influence." Another officer nodded. "People look up to him now, more than they look up to us." A third one hissed, "He's just a mutant. An outcast. We shouldn't be treating him like a hero." "But he is a hero," someone pointed out. "He saved lives." "Yes," said the first officer, "but he's also a problem. If he gains more support, the people will start questioning our leadership. They might even follow him instead." The room fell silent. They all knew what needed to be done. They needed to erase Karn. News spread quickly after that meeting. Official reports began popping up on monitors across the station. Articles claiming that Sarn had hacked the system. Claims that he had endangered civilians by taking control of emergency protocols. There was no proof, but the accusations were enough to make people nervous. Whispers started again. Maybe he went too far, some said. What if he really did break the rules? Others asked. Sarn noticed the change right away. Fewer smiles, fewer nods. When he walked past a group of engineers, they stopped talking and looked away. In the market, someone who had once offered him a free piece of bread now avoided eye contact. He tried to ignore it. He kept cleaning, fixing things, helping whenever he could. But the weight in his chest grew heavier. Raynor was furious. He stormed into the command center, slamming a report onto the table. "This is garbage," he snapped. The officers looked at him silently. "You know what Karn did," Raynor said. "He saved us all. These accusations are lies." One officer spoke quietly. "We can't rely on him forever, Captain. People need to trust their leaders, not a janitor." Raynor leaned in, his voice sharp. "He's not just a janitor. He's the reason this station is still standing." "Maybe," the officer said, "but the council agrees. Sarn must leave the station, for the sake of unity." Raynor clenched his fists. "If he goes, then you're all alone. When the next attack comes, who's going to save you?" They didn't answer. That night, Sarn sat in his tiny quarters. His reflection in the small, cracked mirror stared back at him. "They're going to make me leave," he thought. "No matter what I do, they'll never accept me." A quiet knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. When he opened it, he saw Raynor. "We have to talk," the captain said. Sarn stepped aside, letting him in. Raynor looked serious. He placed a small box on the table and sighed. "They're pushing you out," Raynor said. "I can't stop them." Sarn nodded slowly. He had expected this. "They'll call it reassignment. They'll send you to some remote outpost, away from everyone. They'll say it's for the good of the station." Raynor's voice was bitter. "It's not fair." Sarn looked at him and smiled faintly. "It's okay. I never really belonged here anyway." Raynor's fists tightened. "No, it's not okay. You don't deserve this." Sarn shrugged. "I'm used to it." But Raynor wasn't ready to give up. What happened next surprised everyone. Before the council could announce Karn's transfer, a transmission arrived from Earth. The president of the Human Council appeared on every screen in the station, her voice steady and clear. Today we honor Xarn, a man who stood against fear, who saved lives. He has shown us what it means to be brave, what it means to care for others, and we will not let his name be dragged through the dirt. If he's not welcome there, he will always have a home with us. That message changed everything. The accusations began to fade. The people started questioning their leaders instead. Why were they trying to get rid of Tarn? What were they afraid of? The council's plan began to fall apart. But the enemy wasn't finished. A new threat was rising. Deep in uncharted space, fleets were gathering. They had seen Xarn's rise. They knew what he had done, and they wanted revenge. A week later, the station received another transmission. This one was different. Cold, ominous. A voice, deep and mechanical, spoke in a language you understood. Surrender the one you call Xarn. Give him to us, and we will spare your station. Keep him, and we will destroy you. The room fell silent. Raynor stood tall. We don't negotiate with terrorists. But others weren't so sure. The council met again. Some whispered that maybe they should hand over Xarn, just to be safe, just to avoid another war. Raynor slammed his hand on the table. Xarn is one of us. If they want him, they'll have to go through us. And then something remarkable happened. The workers, the engineers, the medics, the pilots started speaking out. He saved our families. We won't turn him over. If they come for him, they'll have to fight all of us. Xarn is a hero. We stand with him. It wasn't just humans who spoke up. Aliens who had once ignored Xarn now stood by him. Parents whose children he had saved refused to let him go. For the first time, the station stood together. Not because of fear, but because of loyalty. When the enemy fleet arrived, they expected to find a broken, divided station. Instead, they found something terrifying. They found unity. They found humans and aliens side by side, ready to fight. They found Xarn at the front lines, standing tall. And as the enemy ships moved closer, a message was sent back to their fleet. He chose humanity. Now we choose him. A wall of ships hung in the void, blocking out the stars. They weren't just any ships. They were massive, dark beasts of war, their hulls bristling with weapons that could turn the station into dust. Inside Station 92, tension gripped every hallway. People whispered in fear. Some hugged their children. Others prepared for the worst. The message from the enemy was clear. Surrender Xarn, or be destroyed. In the command center, the air was thick with quiet arguments. A holographic map of the enemy fleet floated above the table, casting cold blue light on the faces of the officers. They outnumber us, one said. They outgun us, another added. And they've given us a way out. All eyes turned to the speaker, a nervous, older officer whose voice trembled as he said, "If we hand over Xarn, they'll spare the station." Raynor slammed his hand on the table. Spare us? Do you honestly believe that? These aren't diplomats. They're executioners. They'll kill him, and then they'll come for the rest of us. What if you're wrong? Someone whispered. What if he's right? Another asked. What if we give them Xarn, and it ends here? Raynor's voice was sharp as steel. And if we give them Xarn, what will we be then? A station of cowards. A people who betray our own to save our skin. The room fell silent. Far below the command center, Xarn stood alone in a maintenance tunnel. His reflection stared back at him from a piece of cracked metal on the wall. He didn't need to hear the arguments to know what was happening. He could feel it. The pressure, the fear, the way people's eyes darted away from him when he walked past. Even after all he'd done, there was still a part of him that believed he wasn't enough. You're just a cleaner, he muttered to himself. But then, he remembered Raynor's words. The children's hugs, the strangers who had once spit at his feet now calling him a hero. He clenched his fists. He wasn't just a cleaner anymore, and he wasn't going to run. The first signs of battle came without warning. A single enemy fighter broke formation, firing a test shot at one of the station's outer shields. The impact rattled through the halls, setting off alarms. In the docking bays, human and alien pilots scrambled into their ships. Old fighters, patched together with scavenged parts, powered up with a roar. Workers rushed to prepare the station's defenses. Turrets, drones, anything that could hold off the impending attack. And in the middle of the chaos stood Xarn. "Where's the captain?" one of the engineers shouted. "He's still in the command center," someone answered. Xarn turned to the nearest officer. "Where can I help?" The officer hesitated. The main reactor." "No. Wait, the armory." Xarn didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed a set of tools and sprinted toward the reactor core. He knew the station better than anyone. Every vent, every conduit, every backup system. If this was going to be their last stand, he was going to make sure the station stayed alive long enough to fight. Meanwhile, in the command center, Raynor took command. His voice carried over the comms, calm and firm. "Listen up," he said. "We're not giving them Xarn. We're not surrendering. They think we're weak. Let's show them how wrong they are." The first wave of enemy ships attacked. It was brutal. The station's outer defenses crumbled quickly under the relentless barrage. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, and explosions lit up the cold vacuum of space. But the defenders didn't break. Human pilots fought with unmatched ferocity. Alien engineers kept systems running even as sparks flew and panels burned. Medics worked tirelessly in smoke-filled corridors, patching up the wounded and sending them back to the fight. And in the middle of it all, Xarn was everywhere. When the reactor nearly overheated, Xarn was there, rerouting power and venting excess heat. When a vital docking bay door jammed, Xarn crawled through a maintenance shaft to manually release the lock. When a team of young mechanics panicked under pressure, it was Xarn's calm voice that guided them back on track. "Do this. Pull that lever. Breathe. You've got this." They listened. They trusted him. In the heat of battle, Xarn finally reached the main communications hub. The station's long-range transmitter had been damaged in the first attack. Without it, they couldn't call for reinforcements from Earth or the nearby colonies. Xarn climbed up the tower's framework, tools strapped to his back. Lasers and plasma bolts streaked past the windows. He worked quickly, his hands moving with practiced precision. Sweat dripped down his face, his muscles burned. But he didn't stop. One by one, the systems came back online. When the final connection snapped into place, the transmitter flared to life. A holographic image of Earth's fleet commander appeared on the console. "Station 92, we received your signal. Reinforcements en route. Hold the line." Xarn sighed in relief. Back in the plaza, people began to gather. Children held their parents' hands. Engineers covered in soot paused their repairs. Medics took a moment to breathe. They all looked up at the large screen displaying a live feed from the battle outside. And then on the screen, they saw something that made their hearts swell. They saw Xarn. He was still climbing, still working, still fighting for them. A mother whispered to her son, "That's the man who saved you." An engineer muttered, "He's holding this place together." Even those who had once doubted him felt a surge of pride. Because in that moment, it was clear, Xarn wasn't just one of them. He was the best of them. As the battle raged on, the reinforcements finally arrived. Earth's fleet descended like a hammer, driving the enemy back into the darkness of space. When the last enemy ship retreated, the station erupted into cheers. Xarn didn't hear them at first. He was still in the communications hub, tightening one last bolt, making sure everything was stable. When he finally climbed down, exhausted and covered in grime, he found the plaza packed with people. They turned to him, and they cheered. They chanted his name. Xarn. 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 He froze, unsure of what to do. But then, Rayner stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You chose humanity," Rayner said. "And now, humanity chooses you." Sarn looked out at the crowd. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't nothing. He was a hero. He was nothing. Now he's a legend. The battle was over. Station 92 floated silently in space, its shields flickering but holding steady. Fires were mostly out. Smoke had cleared from the halls. The enemy was gone. But the cost had been high. Zarn stood on the observation deck, staring out into the black. His arms rested on the railing, his fingers still wrapped in bandages. Behind him, repair crews worked tirelessly, patching hull breaches and replacing shattered panels. The station was alive, barely, but it was alive because of him. And yet, he didn't feel like celebrating. Because while the enemy had retreated, Sarn knew they would come back. This wasn't the end. Not yet. 2 days passed. In that time, the station's population rose from fear to hope. People who had never spoken to each other now worked side by side, rebuilding their home. Human soldiers shared meals with alien traders. Scientists and engineers exchanged knowledge freely. For the first time, Station 92 wasn't just a station. It felt like a community. And at the heart of it all was Karn. No longer the janitor, he was now something much larger, a symbol of resilience, courage, and unity. Children ran up to him in the halls, asking him to tell the story of how he fought off the invaders. Parents offered him gifts of food and clothing, gestures of gratitude he wasn't used to. Even the station's officers, once dismissive, nodded respectfully when they passed him. But not everyone was at ease. In the command center, Captain Rayner stood over a holographic map of the surrounding sectors. His face was grim. "They'll return," Rayner said. "It's only a matter of time." Sarn, standing nearby, nodded. "I felt it. They aren't finished." The officers exchanged worried looks. Rayner pointed to the map. "There's a weapons cache here, an old military depot from the last war. It has what we need to strengthen the station's defenses. Problem is, it's deep in enemy space. Too dangerous," one officer said. "Not if we send the right people," Rayner replied. "I'll lead the mission." Sarn stepped forward. "I'll go." The room went silent. "No," Rayner said firmly. "You've done enough." Zarn shook his head. "The people here, they look at me like I'm a hero. But I'm not a hero if I stand back and let them suffer. I can help." Rayner hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but we go together." The journey to the depot was fraught with tension. Rayner and Sarn led a small team of humans and aliens through uncharted space. The enemy fleet was scattered, licking its wounds, but patrols remained. Every jump, every signal carried the risk of discovery. Sarn found himself in the co-pilot's seat of a human frigate, watching as Rayner navigated their course. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cabin, a constant reminder of how far they were from safety. Rayner glanced at him. "You okay?" Sarn nodded. "Just thinking. About why you chose me, back on the station. Before all this." Rayner's hands rested lightly on the controls. "Because I saw something in you that others didn't. I saw a man who could be more than what the world told him to be." Sarn didn't respond. He wasn't used to hearing things like that. The depot appeared on their sensors, a massive structure floating in a decayed orbit around a dead moon. The team landed without incident, slipping through the patrols unnoticed. Inside, the depot was a graveyard of old technology, rusted weapons, abandoned vehicles, forgotten drones. As they scavenged for parts, Sarn felt a strange sense of familiarity. He had spent years fixing, cleaning, and maintaining things that others had discarded. Now those skills made him invaluable. He helped reactivate long-dormant power systems, bypassed security locks, and identified salvageable equipment. But then the alarm sounded. The enemy had found them. A patrol ship had detected their presence, and reinforcements were already on their way. Raynor shouted orders. "Grab what you can. We have to move." The team scrambled, loading weapons and components onto the ship. Sarn worked quickly, hauling crates and activating transport lifts. The depot's halls shook as enemy ships fired on the structure, trying to force them out. Raynor turned to Sarn. "Get on board. I'll cover you." Sarn hesitated, then nodded and ran toward the ship. But just as he reached the ramp, an explosion rocked the depot. A massive support beam fell, blocking the entrance. "Raynor!" Sarn shouted. Raynor was still on the other side, pinned down by enemy fire. He looked at Sarn and yelled, "Go! I'll find another way." But Sarn didn't move. He looked around, his mind racing. And then he saw it. A manual override panel for the depot's old defense system. Without thinking, Sarn ran to the panel. He ripped open the casing, exposed the ancient circuits, and began to work. He didn't have much time. Enemy troops were closing in, and the depot was collapsing around them. Sparks flew as he rewired the controls, bypassing damaged relays and rerouting power. "Sarn, what are you doing?" Raynor's voice crackled over the comm. "I'm giving you a way out." Sarn shouted back. "Get to the maintenance hatch on your left. I'll keep them busy." As Raynor and the team escaped through the hatch, Sarn activated the depot's defense system. Old cannons roared to life, firing at the enemy ships. Automated drones emerged from hidden compartments, attacking the patrols. The enemy forces were thrown into chaos, buying Raynor and the others precious time to escape. But Sarn stayed behind. The depot was falling apart. Flames and smoke filled the air. Sarn stood at the control panel, surrounded by the wreckage of forgotten machines. His hands moved with steady precision, keeping the defenses online as long as possible. He didn't think about what would happen next. He didn't think about the enemy ships closing in. He only thought about the people back on the station, the children, the families, the workers who had looked at him with hope in their eyes. He only thought about them. When the depot finally exploded, the shockwave rippled through space. Raynor's team, now far enough away, watched in silence as the massive structure was engulfed in flames. No one spoke. They all knew what Sarn had done. Back on station of Sarn's sacrifice spread quickly. At first, people didn't believe it. How could the man who had saved them time and time again be gone? But then the transmissions came. The footage of the depot's last stand, the reports from Raynor's team, the final message Sarn had sent before the explosion. "Protect each other. Stay strong. Humanity chose me. Now I choose you. I'll see you among the stars." They built a statue in the plaza. It showed Sarn standing tall, his tools in one hand, a child in the other. At the base of the statue, a simple inscription read, "He was nothing to them. Now he's a legend to us all." And in the years that followed, as Station 92 became a symbol of unity and hope across the galaxy, people would look up at the stars and remember the man who changed everything. The man who proved that even the smallest voice can echo across the universe. The man named Sarn.